Welcome, everyone. On behalf of Sakya Monastery, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Sakya Khondung, His Eminence Asanga Rinpoche. He is a grandson of two highly realized masters, His Holiness Jigdal Daikchen Sakya Dorje Tang and His Eminence Kamtur Rinpoche. Today, Asanga Rinpoche will give a talk on Padmasambhava and the Tsok Puja. So without further ado, welcome Your Eminence Asanga Rinpoche. Okay. Now we say Asanga Rinpoche.
Everyone.
Oh, good. Now it's coming on. Oh.
I'd like to welcome you all.
Okay, I think so.
Thank you for gathering here for the teaching, or you could say the talk on Guru Padmasambhava's short life story, as well as the significance of the Tsok teaching. As we all know, as Mahayana, and especially as Vajrayana practitioners, the main thing which we aim for is for full and complete enlightenment. And so in order to attain that, we first need to accumulate a great deal of merit. And in the Buddhist path, you could say, the Buddha introduced many ways in which we can accumulate great merit. And among the many methods that he introduced, one is the Guru Padmasambhava Tsok practice. So this is one of the ways, you could say methods, in which we can quickly accumulate and perfect the accumulations, as well as cut conceptions. And so this is the whole purpose of practicing Tsok. It is to accumulate great merit and to cut the conceptions that we have. And when we offer the Tsok, we are offering it to a very special field, which in this case is Guru Padmasambhava himself, who is none other than the Buddha Shakyamuni. So before I speak more about the Tsok practice itself, I thought of speaking a bit about the life of Guru Padmasambhava, because when we speak of Guru Padmasambhava, we need to know who is Guru Padmasambhava. So in order to understand that, I will say a few words on his life story based upon the biography which was written about him by the great non-sectarian master, Jamgyal Kongtrul Lodro Thaye. And it is titled The Life and Liberation of Padmakara, the second Buddha, from a precious garland of lapis lazuli. And of course, I won't read, we don't have the time to read all of this, to go through all of this, but I will extract the main points of the essence from this biography and share it with you all today. So first of all, one thing that we should understand before listening to the biography of Guru Padmasambhava is that he is unlike sentient beings, he is a fully enlightened Buddha. So his biography or life story will not be in any way similar to the biographies of ordinary beings. So this is one thing to keep in mind. Also, when listening to the biography of Guru Padmasambhava, it is important to open your mind a bit open your mind a bit, and I don't know the exact word, but not be too tight in your thinking, and instead be open to believing in miracles, because Guru Padmasambhava's life is full of accounts where he showed many great miracles for the sake of sentient beings. So to many, it may sound like a story which is of fiction, but to those who have great devotion, it is a story which is all filled with facts. And if we believe in the miracles and the life accounts of Guru Padmasambhava, it becomes a cause for us to receive a great many blessings from him. And it also has the power, just by listening to the biography of his, to be free from our afflictions, the defilements, and our bad karma. And so basically it sows the seed for liberation in our mind stream. So therefore it's important not to just listen to the biography of Guru Padmasambhava out of mere curiosity, but it is important that one should listen to it with great devotion and trust. And so now to speak of his biography, there's a prophecy regarding Masambava before he was born. And this prophecy was told by Buddha Shakyamuni himself in a tantra. And that prophecy goes as, 8 years after I pass into nirvana, I will reappear in the country of Udayana, bearing the name Padmasambhava. I will become the Lord of the teachings of secret mantra. So in this way, Buddha Shakyamuni prophesied that 8 years after his passing, he would reincarnate as the great being, which we now know as Masambava, and spread the Vajrayana teachings in the world. So what we can understand from this is that Buddha Shakyamuni's main sort of mission coming into this world was to spread the sutras, the teachings on the sutras, to the many different disciples. And although he did also teach many tantras, he left the responsibility or the main job for spreading the tantras or the Vajrayana teachings on a grand scale to his own reincarnation, Guru Padmasambhava, who was born 8 years after the passing of Lord Buddha himself. So with this, we should understand that Guru Padmasambhava is none other in essence than Buddha Shakyamuni, just in a different form, but the mind is same. And also for this reason, he is known as the second Buddha. He's popularly known as Ugen Sangye Nibbon, which is the second Buddha from Udayana. And Guru Padmasambhava's main mission to appear in this world was, of course, to spread the Vajrayana teachings, but not only that, but to vanquish all of the obscurations and all of the enemies or foes that posed as a threat to the survival of the Buddha Dharma in India, Tibet, and many countries. So this was his main mission. And it is for that reason that he had to show many miraculous signs. And so not only was Guru Padmasambhava an emanation of Buddha Shakyamuni, but he was also a direct emanation of Buddha Amitabha, who is the Buddha of limitless light, who lives in the western Pure Land of Sugawati. And Guru Padmasambhava is also an incarnation of the Avalokiteshvara, the embodiment of the compassion of all of the Buddhas of the 10 directions and 3 times. So when we speak of a Buddha, according to the Mahayana tradition, the Buddha has 3 bodies. the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nimanakaya. And this also applies for Guru Padmasambhava because he is a fully enlightened being. So the form which we usually see in the paintings and statues of Guru Padmasambhava, that is his Nimanakaya form, which we call in Tibetan the Tulku. So that is his Nimanakaya form, which is easily visible for ordinary sentient beings. But in the ultimate realm, or you could say the Dharmakaya realm, known as luminous Vajra essence, he resides as the Buddha known as unchanging light. So he has a Dharmakaya form that we should understand. Also, he has a Sambhogakaya form. Sambhogakaya is the Buddha, which resides only in the pure realm, in a pure realm, and not in the ordinary world such as ours or in the universe, but in the completely pure realm. And the Sambhogakaya has 5 certainties, such as the Sambhogakaya's retinue. The retinue will always be fully enlightened bodhisattvas, such as those on the 10th level. And the Sambhogakaya will teach only the Mahayana Dharma and not any other Dharma, such as the Hinayana. And the Sambhogakaya Buddha teaches until samsara is emptied. So there's also a limit. And the time duration which the Buddha Sambhogakaya teaches Dharma is until samsara is emptied with sentient beings. And then the Sambhogakaya's form or body has all of the 32 major and 80 minor signs of a fully enlightened being. And so these are the 5 certainties of the Sambhogakaya Buddha. And in the case of Guru Padmasambhava, he resides in the pure realm known as resounding drum of perfection. And in that Buddha realm, he resides in the Sambhogakaya form known as lotus who holds all. And so that is his Sambhogakaya form, regarding that form. Then now we finally come to his Nimanakaya form. And the Nimanakaya form is emanated from the Sambhogakaya form. As mentioned earlier, the Sambhogakaya form does not appear in this world and just resides in the pure realms. So still, because there are sentient beings in samsara, the Buddha or the Sambhogakaya form needs to accomplish their needs. And in order to do that, the Sambhogakaya emanates many emanations into the 10 directions, into the many universes. And for that, there are many different kinds of emanations, such as the most excellent Nimanakaya form, such as Buddha Shakyamuni. There are also emanations of the Sambhogakaya, such as in the forms of great religious teachers, kings, queens, merchants, householders, monks, nuns, even beggars, and the like, whatever form benefits sentient beings. And then there's also, the Nimanakaya form also appears in the form of animals, such as rabbits, lions, and the like. And it can also manifest into forms, inanimate forms, such as bridges, hills, roads, boats, and the like. So in this way, the Sambhogakaya performs a great service to sentient beings, to the Sambhogakaya's many emanations. And in the case of Guru Padmasambhava, as mentioned earlier, he is originally in the pure land of resounding drum of perfection, resides as Sambhogakaya Buddha known as lotus who holds all. And from that form, he emanates many emanations into the world. And especially into our world, he emanated as Guru Padmasambhava, the way we know him wearing the lotus hat, the what we call sort of like the chupa, the Tibetan kind of clothing, also the robes, and holding the Vajra and the skull cup and the like. So he emanated into that form. And it is known that among the many emanations of Buddha Padmasambhava, it is only in the universe which we live in, which is known as endurance, that he teaches the complete, that he bestows the complete teachings of the Buddha Dharma, which include both Sutra and Tantra to all sentient beings in the universe. And so therefore, this is one thing that we should understand. Basically, much cannot be said about his activities because, first of all, it is impossible for ordinary sentient beings like myself to comprehend or understand the complete activities of an enlightened being. That is just simply impossible. But to some extent, it can be explained. And also because many of the enlightened beings wrote down many biographies written about him, it is possible to some extent to mention about the qualities of Padmasambhava. But again, Guru Padmasambhava's life story is so complex that it is difficult to speak about it. It is so complex and it can be understood in so many ways that around 10,900 stories or biographies of his exist. That is the number you could say. It can be even more than that. According to Jamgal Kongtrul, there are 10,900 stories of his life that were composed and hidden for the sake of future disciples. So that is a great number. And it just shows how difficult it is to fully understand his activities and how he helps sentient beings. But anyways, due to the writings that exist, that have been very compassionately written by the great masters and also by Guru Padmasambhava himself, and buried as treasures, known as Dhamma, and revealed by the great Dhammas, or the treasure revealers, we are able to appreciate, you could say, at least a drop from the ocean of his life account. So, to continue speaking about him, first of all, now we need to start with his biography, like the birth account of his that is mentioned in his biographies. For this, it varies because in most of the Indian accounts, the ancient Indian accounts, it is mentioned that Guru Padmasambhava was born from his mother, and born just in the same way as ordinary sentient beings are born. But in most of the Dhamma treasures, it is mentioned that he was born miraculously from a lotus, and that Buddha Amitabha himself, out of his great compassion for sentient beings, sent from his heart a golden Vajra marked with the syllable Shi into a lotus that was in the middle of a pond in the land of Udayana. So this place called Udayana is the place where Buddha Padmasambhava was born. We usually, many of you might think that Buddha Padmasambhava was born in India, but actually when we look at the location of where Udayana is, it is currently also called Swat Valley, and that is located somewhere in Pakistan, modern-day Pakistan. So you could say that Guru Padmasambhava was born in Pakistan, in a place known as Udayana. And at that time, Udayana, unlike now, was a great place where the Buddha Dharma was thriving. There were many monasteries, many Buddhist practitioners, and many great saints there. it was a totally different case as of now. So we should understand that. And Guru Masambava was appeared in the lotus miraculously. And when he was born, unlike a very small baby, it wasn't like that, but he was already in the form of an 8-year-old child while he was in the lotus. So when the lotus bud opened, he came out of the lotus and he was already in the form of an 8-year-old child. So in the land of Odiyama, there was a king known as Indrabuddhi. He was a great Dharma practitioner, and he was known for giving out all of his wealth to all of the needy. And due to that, his treasury became emptied. And so he then needed to send, he thought that in order to sort of refill the treasury with jewels so that he can continue his great generosity or charity, his practice in generosity to sentient beings. He thought he should send someone to the lake where Guru Masambava was to be born to retrieve treasures from the bottom of the lake. So he sent someone there, and the messenger, you could say, arrived at the lake and noticed that there was this extremely beautiful lotus in the middle of the lake, and realized that there was also a child in the lotus. And so he went back to the king, informed the king what he saw. And so the king then became very happy the moment he heard that, and thought to himself that this must be the answer to his prayers. And so he went to the lake with great preparations to invite the child that was in the lotus. And so he made great preparations by bringing such things as parasols, cloths, many wonderful silk cloths, chariots, horses, elephants, and a great procession to invite the Padmasambhava, the lotus, down to the palace of King Indrabuddhi. And in that way, Padmasambhava was invited to the palace. And when he was invited and arrived at the palace, he became the prince to the king, the adopted son, because the king had no children. And he really also wanted a son. And so Padmasambhava was the answer to his prayers. And he then became known as Padmakara, or the lotus-born. And he also came to be known as Tsok, which is the lake-born Vajra. And they offered all of the king, the queen, the citizens, and the like, placed Padmakara on a throne and made many great offerings to him. And in that way, they accumulated a great deal of merit. And in that way, Padmakara lived with the king and queen for a long time. And as he grew up, he continued to bring many sentient beings to maturation, even though he was living the palace life. Even whatever activity he did, whether it be playing games or any kind of sports, in any of those activities, he was liberating sentient beings at each moment. And he also married around that time the Dagini, known as Prabhavati, and together they ruled the kingdom of Odiyama according to the Dharma. And at that time, he was also known as King Dordoche, or the turban band, the turban king, probably because of his hairstyle at that time. But then he came to understand, just like Prince Siddhartha did, that continuing to live the palace life cannot really bring a great benefit to sentient beings on a vast scale. So he understood that in order to benefit sentient beings, he needs to escape from the palace. And in the beginning, because the king did not have any children other than Dhammakara, the king was reluctant to let go of Dhammakara. But Dhammakara, because he was very skillful in means, killed accidentally during the middle of a drama or a play, killed the son of one of the evil ministers of his father king, and liberated the mind and sent the mind consciousness of the son of the evil minister up to the pure realm. But because he did that, he broke the rules of the country, and due to that, although there was many people who wanted to have the prince Dhammakara killed because of an action that he had committed, the king did not let others kill Dhammakara, but instead exiled Dhammakara from the land of Udayana, and made sure that he could not return. And in that way, his father made sure that his Dhammakara's life would be spared. And for this, for Dhammakara, that was the perfect thing. This is exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to get away from the palace life and practice the Dharma. And so he went to the grove, or the charnel ground, known as Siddhavana. It is known as Cool Grove in English, and also to the places known as Nandavana, Nandanavana, which is known as Joyful Grove, and Sosadvipa, which is the Sosa land. And he practiced yoga in those lands, Vajra practices. And around that time, he also received empowerments and blessings from the Dakini known as Marajita, which in English is known as Tamer of Mara, and also from a master known as Chantarakshita, whose name would be translated as preserver of peace. And while he was living at this charnel ground, he brought all of the Dakinis, all of the evil, whether it be the good Dakinis or evil Dakinis. Usually we think that when we speak of Dakinis, we think they are just good, always going to be good Dakinis, but there are two classes of Dakinis. There's the good Dakinis who like the Buddha Dharma, and there are also the Dakinis that are evil and create obstacles to the practice of the Buddha Dharma. But in any way, he tamed all of the Dakinis that were living in the charnel ground. And around that time, he obtained the name, or came to be known by the name of Chantarakshita. So earlier he was known as Dhammakara. Now he came to be known as Chantarakshita, the preserver of peace. And then he went to the lake of Dhanakosha. This is one famous lake. And he went there, and he also brought all of the Dakinis living there under his command, and gave them, make them, you could say, force them to take the oath to protect the Buddha Dharma by serving as Dharma protectors. And he continued to also practice at places known as the rugged forest. And around that time, the Dakini, the female enlightened Buddha, known as Vajra, appeared to him and blessed him. And around that time, he also attained another new name known as Doja Takutsal, which is the wrathful Vajra light. So these are like important names. He has many names because he performed many actions, such as subduing the demons and liberating such beings. So each time he did such actions, he received a different name. And so then he also continued to Bodh Gaya, which is the place where Buddha Shakyamuni became enlightened. And he arrived at the Vajra tomb there, which is the exact spot where the Buddha attained enlightenment. And there he displayed a lot of miracles in order to inspire sentient beings to practice the Dharma. And around that time, people would ask him, who are you? Because they were curious of who this very interesting being who was showing all of these miracles was. And to that, he would reply, I am a self-manifested Buddha. And although he did directly tell them that he was a Buddha, self-manifested Buddha, many of them, many people, because they did not have enough good karma and not enough pure vision, and were filled with impure vision. Because of that, they did not believe what he said, and instead insulted him and defamed him. So anyways, for those type of sentient beings, they could not be benefited temporarily. So Guru Padmasambhava went on to other places, and he saw at one point that there would be great benefit if he took on the monk ordination in the Vinaya tradition, becoming a fully ordained monk. And so he went to the master known as Prabhahasti and received the monk's ordination. And at that time, Guru Padmasambhava came to be known as Shakya Singye, which is Lion of the Shakyas. This form one can see in the Dhankas, where there are the 8 manifestations of Guru Padmasambhava. There's one manifestation that looks exactly like Shakyamuni Buddha, but the only difference is he is holding a Vajra in his right hand. So this is the form, Shakya Singye, for that. And so he received many teachings, not just the Vinaya, but also the Vajrayana teachings, such as many yogas and tantras from Prabhahasti. And he had many visions of the Yidam deities due to that. And he also met many other masters, not just Prabhahasti, but also the nun known as Ananda, and she gave him many empowerments. And Guru Padmasambhava also visited the 8 Vidyadharas, which if you search probably on the web, you will find each of their names. They are the early masters of the Dzogchen teachings. You could say the root gurus of Guru Padmasambhava himself. So there were mainly 8 Vidyadharas. Vidyadhara means awareness holder. So from them, he received the teachings on the Gagye, or you could call that in English the 8 pronouncements, and many teachings such as those on the Ati Yoga, which are all treasured teachings in the Nyingma tradition. And around that time, he attained the first Vidyadhara level. According to the Nyingma tradition, there are 4 Vidyadhara levels which one can attain. And around that time, he attained the first level, which is known as the Vidyadhara level of maturation. And he attained the name Loden Chokse, which is wise seeker of the sublime. Following that, Guru Padmasambhava returned to the land of Sahor, which is currently known as Mandi, located in Himachal, India. And there he took on as his consort the princess known as Mandarava, who was the daughter of King Vihardara, who was the king of Sahor or Mandi. And Princess Mandarava is one of the most important consorts of Guru Padmasambhava. Guru Padmasambhava actually had many consorts, but he had 2 main consorts. One was the Indian princess, Princess Mandarava, and the other one was the Tibetan queen known as Ishitsorya. So this is Princess Mandarava. So he took her as his consort, and together they then headed to Nepal, to the Maratika cave. It is a cave high up in the mountains, and it is quite far from the Kathmandu Valley. one can get there by traveling by helicopter. It takes quite some time, and it's quite difficult to get there. But anyways, he went there and he practiced for a duration of 3 months on the sadhana of longevity, along with Princess Mandalava. And at the end of 3 months, Buddha Amitayus, who is the Buddha of limitless life, he's actually none other than Buddha Amitabha. Buddha Amitabha is the Buddha appearing in the monk's form, you could say, the ordained form, while Buddha Amitabha is none other than Buddha Amitabha appearing in the Sambhava form, or the enjoyment body. So anyways, Guru Padmasambhava beheld the face of Buddha Amitayus, and Buddha Amitayus bestowed upon them, both Guru Padmasambhava and Princess Mandalava, immortality. And with that, Guru Padmasambhava attained the second stage of the Vidyadhara level, which is known as Vidyadhara with mastery over life, or you could say lifespan. So now with this, Guru Padmasambhava became immortal. He cannot die, or he has complete power or control, or you could say choice over how long he wishes to live. So now that both he and the princess had attained the Vajra bodies beyond birth and death, they went back to the kingdom of Sahor. And they went begging there in that land. And as they were begging, the royal ministers of Mandi or Sahor arrested them. And they wanted to burn them alive. Because this all happened because, as mentioned earlier, Guru Padmasambhava took Princess Mandalava as his consort. And when he did that, it was not exactly with the support of her father. He sort of forcefully took her. But it wasn't like she did not wish to go with him. She actually liked him a lot because the Guru Rinpoche taught her the teachings. So she felt devotion towards him. And when he told her that he needed a consort to accomplish longevity together, she agreed to that and accompanied him. But anyways, the king was very angered by that. So when they returned back, the royal ministers caught them, recognized them, and arrested them and attempted to burn them alive. But when they were doing that, when the fire was burning, Guru Padmasambhava transformed the fire into a lake. And in the middle of the lake, he displayed himself sitting with his consort, Princess Mandalava. And when the king and the ministers of Sahor saw that, they felt great regret because now they knew that they had messed with enlightened beings, unordinary beings. So due to that, they felt great regret, and they then sought to seek Guru Padmasambhava as their teacher, and they embraced the Dharma. And so for a long time, the Guru then helped them establishing the Dharma and eventually into liberation. Following that, Guru Padmasambhava, along with Princess Mandalava, went to Udayana, the place where Guru Padmasambhava was born, in order to tame the citizens of that land. But once again, while they were begging in Udayana, they were recognized by certain people, and they caught them, arrested them, and just like what happened earlier in Sahor, the citizens, especially the ministers of Udayana, tried to burn Guru Padmasambhava along with Princess Mandalava again. And the main minister who caught them or recognized them was the minister, the evil minister, whose son, Guru Padmasambhava, liberated in order to escape the palace. So that father of the deceased son, the evil minister, recognized them and tried to burn them. But then again, Guru Padmasambhava transformed the fire into a lake. And he was seated there along with Mandalava, wearing a garland of skulls, which was a symbol of their activity of liberating all beings from samsara. And with that, Padmasambhava now came to be known as Pema Tuting Sal, which will be translated as mighty lotus with skull garland. And so after that, again, the king and the ministers and the citizens of Odhyana felt great regret, and they became disciples of Guru Padmasambhava and were established in the Dharma. And for a number of 13 years, Guru Padmasambhava, along with Princess Mandalava, remained in Udayana as teachers by royal appointment. It established the whole kingdom in the Dharma. And during this time, he bestowed many empowerments and teachings, such as that of the Gaduchigi Gyatso, which is the ocean of Dharma, the great gathering of transmitted precepts, to the king, his father, the queen, and all of the citizens. And at that time, he also came to be known as Pema Gyalpo, which is the Lotus King. And then there's a very interesting part here in the biography of Guru Padmasambhava mentioned, written by Jamgyal Kongtrul Lodro Thaye, which says that in accordance with a prophecy in the sutra on magical perception, Pema transformed himself into the monk Indrasena in order to bring King Ashoka to the Dharma. He established Ashoka in unwavering faith, after which in a single miraculous night, the king erected 1 million stupas all around the world, all containing the relics of the Buddha. So it seems that Pema or Padmasambhava's life is connected with King Ashoka, the very famous Indian Buddhist king, the Mauryan Emperor Ashoka. When we speak of Ashoka's life, we say that he was inspired by one monk, a Buddhist monk, or the actions or the lifestyle of one particular monk, that later on he accepted or embraced the Buddhist religion. So according to this biography, that monk, whose name was Indrasena, was none other than Padmasambhava. It was just one of his emanations to bring King Ashoka into the Dharma. Now, when we speak of King Ashoka, one will find that there's a great time period of probably several centuries following the death of Buddha Shakyamuni and the birth of King Ashoka. Earlier we mentioned that Padmasambhava was born 8 years after Buddha Shakyamuni passed away. And King Ashoka lived several centuries after the Buddha passed away. So if one wonders how is that possible, we need to remind ourselves that earlier Padmasambhava had attained mastery over life at Maratika. So therefore he is now immortal. So he can live as many centuries as he wishes to. And so therefore that was all possible due to that. And so later on after that, Guru Padmasambhava went on to defeat some powerful heretic kings who were threatening the survival of the Buddha Dharma. And out of his many methods, skillful methods, he liberated their minds or consciousness into the Pure Lands. At one time, there was also a evil king who tried to poison Guru Padmasambhava, but Guru Rinpoche was unharmed. And at times, there were enemies who tried to throw Guru Rinpoche into the Ganges River. But instead of being harmed by that, Guru Rinpoche reversed the flow of the river, the Ganges River, and danced mid-air and inspired many of his disciples. And in that way, he also came to be known as Kyuchung Kadingsal, which is the mighty child of the Garudas. And according to Jamgyal Gongchu, Guru Padmasambhava also emanated himself as many great masters such as Sararuha, who was the founder of the Vajra Tantra. Also, Guru Padmasambhava emanated as the Brahmin Saraha, who was the teacher of Nagarjuna. Guru Padmasambhava also emanated himself as Virupa, who was one of the forefathers in the Lamje lineage of the Sakya tradition. He also emanated as the disciple of Virupa, both Drambi Heruka and Krishnacharya were the main two half-sons of Virupa. So therefore, in the Sakya tradition itself, our most prized teaching is the Lamje. And it was passed down from Buddha Vajradhara to Vajra Nairatma, and then to Mahasiddha Virupa, to Mahasiddha Krishnacharya and the like. So these very two important masters of the Lamje lineage, the most earliest masters, according to Jamgyal Gongchu, were also emanations of Guru Padmasambhava. And when he emanated these many bodies, he also came to be known by the name of Nimanakaya, which is rays of the sun, which is probably because he emanated many rays of emanations. And then at one point at Bodh Gaya, there were 500 non-Buddhist teachers, and they launched an attack on the Buddha Dharma, on the Buddhist teachings, or you could say Buddhism in general. And around that time, there were many scholars among the 500 heretical teachers, and also many magicians. And so the Buddhist side and the non-Buddhist side, both parties had a competition. And when it came to debates on logic and scholarly debates, the Panditas living around Bodh Gaya were able to defeat the heretical teachers. But when it came to displaying magical, magic, miracles, the heretical teachers were no match. So at that time, the Panditas invited Guru Padmasambhava, and Guru Padmasambhava arrived there. And still at that time, the heretical teachers were very powerful, so very powerful that they cast many spells upon Guru Padmasambhava as well. And at that time, the Dakini, the Buddhist Dakini known as Marajita, or also known as Tamer of Mara in English, granted Guru Rinpoche a wrathful mantra. And when Guru Rinpoche used this mantra towards the heretical teachers, he caused lightning to strike, and that lightning struck the heretical teachers and liberated their minds to the Pure Land. And in that way, Guru Padmasambhava saved Buddhism. He ensured that Buddhism would continue to survive in India. So therefore, his kindness was very great, even in India, before he arrived in India, in Tibet. And at that time, when he subdued the heretical teachers, he came to be known as Guru Singye Datrok, which is Lion's Roar. And at that time, up until that point, he had, as mentioned earlier, remained in the Vidyadhara level of life mastery, which is the stage of having fully perfected the Supreme Path. Following that, he went to Yanglesho, which is located, it's said in the textbook that is located in the middle between India and Nepal. But if we go to Nepal, it is located there. One will find a cave in Nepal known as Yanglesho. And there, Guru Rinpoche met Shakya Devi, who was the daughter of the Newar king, Vinyadhara. And he accepted her as his consort in support for his Dharma practice. And together they practiced Sri Heruka, also known as Yangdak, the Yidam deity known as Yangdak. But when they did that, there were many obstacles to his practice. So then Guru Rinpoche understood that he needed to practice on the deity known as Vajra Kilaya, because through Vajra Kilaya, it is possible to dispel all obstacles in the path of practice. So, although he wanted to practice on Vajra Kilaya, it was not possible to do that immediately. He did not have the practice manuals. So he sent 2 messengers back to India to ask his own gurus who were living in India to send the Vajra Kilaya teachings to him, to deliver them back to Guru Rinpoche, who was now residing in Nepal. And the messengers returned back with a basket that was filled with the tantras and the commentaries of Vajra Kilaya. And the moment the Vajra Kilaya tantras and commentaries arrived at Yanglesho, it rained, and the drought, disease, and famine all came to an end in the land. Previously, all of these obstacles were caused by the Raksha and the spirits and the magical creatures who were intent on creating obstacles to Guru Rinpoche's practice. So the moment the Vajra Kilaya teachings arrived, all of these disappeared. And the Guru Rinpoche and both Shakya Devi were able to practice both Sri Heruka and Vajra Kilaya without any obstacles. And with that, he attained the 3rd stage of the Vidyadhara level, which is known as Vidyadhara of the Great Seal, or you could call it Vidyadhara of Mahamudra. So this is the 3rd level that he now attained. And then following that, it is mentioned that Dhammakara, while still living in India, visited not only Udayana, which he was born in, but also the places known as Purmuju, Sikudara, Dhammakusha, and Rukma. He also went to Thiraputi and many regions, and also the place in India known as Kamarupa. And there he taught the Dharma according to the different abilities and capacities of sentient beings, and bestowed the common and uncommon siddhis, or blessings, upon them. And he also continued to show many great miracles, such as bringing water where there was none, or even if it would benefit sentient beings, he would drain lakes so it could become a place where people could live and practice the Dharma. And so based on the different needs of sentient beings, he displayed many different miracles. And there's also a story, incident, when the king of the Turks sent an invading army to the kingdom known as Kacha. And in that kingdom, there was a Buddhist group, Buddhist community, which was thriving. And so the king of Turks, who was a non-Buddhist king, sent an army there to probably kill all of the Buddhists there and to empty the land of Buddhism. But as the king's boats entered the Nili River, which was a river located in the Kacha land, Guru Rinpoche performed the threatening mudra. And just by performing the threatening mudra, Guru Rinpoche sank 500 vessels, or 500 ships that the king had sent. And with that, he ended the Turks' violence. And there's also an account of how he visited the land known as Dravida, but there's no, I don't think it is too important to mention that at the moment. But anyways, it is commonly known that Guru Masambava lived in India for a total of 3,600 years. But then, according to scholars, Jamgon Khondung says that people consider that number, 3,600 years, to represent half years. So, because I believe in ancient times, especially in India, 6 months was counted as 1 year. So therefore, when we say 3,600 years, we are supposed to understand it as half of that. But anyways, Guru Rinpoche lived a very, very long time in India, benefiting sentient beings. And also, in order to convert the people in Mongolia and China, it is known that Guru Rinpoche emanated himself in the form of a clairvoyant king and also a powerful yogi, and converted many people in Mongolia and China into Buddhism. And he also appeared in the place known as Shangchun and emanated emanation there to benefit sentient beings and to teach the Ati Yoga. Now we come to the part where Guru Padmasambhava arrived in Tibet. So to speak of this, at that time, there was a Buddhist king in Tibet known as King Chisong Detsen. And he was an emanation of Manjushri, the embodiment of the wisdom of all of the Buddhas. And he was born in Tibet. And he made a strong aspiration for the spread of the teachings of the Buddha in the land of Tibet, because up until that point, there was not really much of Buddhism in Tibet. It was mostly the ancient Pern religion that was existing in Tibet, and most of the Tibetans were followers of that non-Buddhist religion, which is known as Pern. And before King Chisong Detsen, there was one Tibetan king, a very famous one known as King Songtsen Gampo. And King Songtsen Gampo married one princess from China and one from Nepal. And together, this trio established the Jokang temple, the Lhasa, invited the Lhasa Joe, 2 different Buddha statues, one from China, one from Nepal, and placed them in a temple in Lhasa. And with that, they kind of sowed the seeds of Buddhism to spread in Tibet. But still, not much was done after they passed away. So, several centuries later, King Chisong Detsen, the descendant of King Songtsen Gampo, was born. And he really wanted to make Buddhism the official religion of Tibet. So he made that aspiration to spread the teachings of the Buddha Dharma. And so he invited Kimbo Bodhisattva, also known as Shantarakshita, who was a great Indian Buddhist monk. And so he invited him from India to Tibet, and Kenshin Bodhisattva arrived. Usually, we will see a trio, many Nyingma Thangkas, where there is in the middle Guru Padmasambhava. On his right, there is a very aged Buddhist monk, and on Guru Rinpoche's left, there is the king, Chisong Detsen. So this is Kimbo, who is on Guru Rinpoche's right side. It's usually depicted in paintings. So anyways, Kimbo Bodhisattva arrived in Tibet. He taught dependent origination, the teachings related to that. These are like basic Buddhist teachings. And also he instructed the Tibetans on how to perform the 10 virtuous deeds of the body, speech, and mind, and the like. And then after about 1 year, following the arrival of Bodhisattva in Tibet, the foundation was laid by King Tuzan Ledzin for a huge temple to be erected. This was to become the first Tibetan Buddhist monastery in Tibet, and was to become known as Samye. And so King Tuzan Ledzin started the building of that monastery. But the thing was that in Tibet at that time, there were so many protectors or spirits belonging to the Pern tradition, the non-Buddhist Pern tradition, and they hated the Buddha Dharma, and they did not want the Buddha Dharma to spread. And so therefore they created obstacles for the successful completion of Samye Monastery. So therefore, when the Tibetan people would build the monastery in the daytime, at nighttime, the spirits would demolish the monastery. So on the next day, when the workers came back to see how it was going, they would just find that whatever they had worked in the daytime was gone. So in this way, the monastery was not being able to be completed easily. So King Tuzan Ledzin then understood that there needs to be a powerful Buddhist sort of, you could say, sorcerer or magician, or anyways, a very good Dharma practitioner who could display magic or miracles. And so Kimbo Bodhisattva then recommended to the king that in India, currently, there is somebody known by the name of Guru Masambava. He is a great master, and he is capable of taming all of these spirits and fulfilling the king's wishes. And so, therefore, King Tuzan Ledzin then sent messengers to Guru Masambava to invite him to Tibet. But before the messengers were sent, Guru Masambava, because he's a fully enlightened being, a clairvoyant, already knew that he was going to be invited. So he had made the journey to Tibet even before the king had sent the messengers. And so by the time the messengers met Guru Rinpoche was already on the road and had arrived at Mangyul, the place known as Mangyul, after having gradually traveled from Nepal. And after that, Guru Rinpoche was escorted by the messengers to the different places in Tibet, such as Ngari, Wuzang, and Dokam. Those are the different regions in Tibet. So he visited all of these places. And it is popularly known among Tibetans that there is not a single soil in Tibet which Guru Rinpoche did not step on. There's not a single soil or a single place that Guru Rinpoche did not visit. And because of this, I would also like to mention about the connection which we Sakyapas have with Guru Rinpoche. It is known that before the Sakya tradition was founded, Guru Rinpoche visited the Sakya land and blessed that land as well. So the Sakya tradition was first founded by Khondung, the first Sakya tradition, in the year 1073, which would be in the 11th century. And so Khondung established the first Sakya monastery, and with that the tradition was formed in that year, 1073, which is in the 11th century. But Guru Rinpoche arrived in Tibet during the 8th century, which is about 3 centuries before the Sakya tradition was founded. And so when Guru Rinpoche arrived at Sakya, there was no monastery. It was just a plain hill, empty land. But out of his omniscience or cleverness, he foresaw that in the future there would be the current family members who would live there, form a monastery, establish a monastery, form a tradition, and benefit many sentient beings. So he decided to bless the land. And so he erected different stupas in the different directions in the land of Sakya in order to bless and protect that place. So in that way, we have a connection with Guru Rinpoche. And so now continuing with the story. While Guru Rinpoche was traveling through Ngari, Udzang, and Dokham, there were many of the Pern protectors who were enemies of the Buddha Dharma. There were particularly 12 very powerful goddesses. We call them the Denma Jumi in Tibetan, the 12 Denma goddesses. And Guru Rinpoche tamed all of them one by one and made them into protectors of the Buddha Dharma, especially the Nyingma tradition. And then finally, Guru Rinpoche met King Chuson Detsen at the Tamarisk forest at Changmar, which is known as Red Rock. It's a place in Tibet. And then they went together to the top of Mount Hepuri. On the top of Mount Hepuri, Guru Rinpoche got all of the gods and demons of Tibet under his command. So in that way, he cleared the path of all obstacles, made it easy for the Buddha Dharma, and made it sort of very possible for the Buddha Dharma to spread in Tibet. And with that, now the king could fulfill his wishes. And the Samye monastery, after quite some time, was successfully completed. And the way it was completed was earlier, as I mentioned. In the daytime, the humans would build up the monastery. At nighttime, the spirits would demolish or take down whatever was built during the daytime. But because Guru Rinpoche tamed the protectors, made them into Dharma protectors, now during the building of the monastery, in the daytime, the humans would stack up the bricks, you could say, or the rocks. And at nighttime, the Dharma protectors would also participate in the building of the monastery. And so in that way, Samye monastery was completed very quickly, because both humans and non-humans participated in the building, or took part in the building of Samye monastery, the first Tibetan Buddhist monastery. It came to be known as glorious Samye, inconceivable, unchanging, spontaneously accomplished temple. That is the meaning of Samye. And this monastery, although it was damaged over the time, has been repaired. And one can, if one visits Tibet, one can go there for pilgrimage. And the shape of the monastery is sort of resembles the mandala, which I taught quite some time ago, the 32-point mandala, the 37-point mandala. So in the middle symbolizes Mount Meru, and then there's some other temples symbolizes other parts, such as the 4 continents, the 8 subcontinents, the sun and moon, and so on. So Samye monastery was built in that fashion. And then after the monastery was established, King Chuson Detsen wanted to, because it was his wish to spread the Dharma, there needed to be the teachings translated into Tibetan, because up until that point, there was pretty much hardly any of the Buddha's teachings that were available in the Tibetan language. So if it's not available in the Tibetan language, then Tibetans wouldn't be able to benefit from the Buddha's teachings. So King Chiso Detsen saw the need, the importance of having translators. So he sent many young Tibetans to India to learn the Buddha Dharma and to learn Sanskrit. And that mission was successful. And many translators, such as Verachana, Gawapalzik, Joruli Gyaltsen, and the like, became great translators. Also Shang Nishide. So they returned to Tibet and translated many parts of the Gangyu, the works or the sayings of the Buddha, and also the Dengyur, which is the collected sayings of the great masters, the disciples of the Buddha. And so this was all thanks to the kindness. Nowadays, Tibetans being able to benefit from the Buddha Dharma, being able to read the teachings of the Buddha in our own language, is all due to the kindness of both Guru Padmasambhava, Kimbo Bodhisattva, and King Chisong Deltsen. So those three did a great service to the Buddha Dharma. And not only that, but Guru Rinpoche also sent Verachana, his disciples, Verachana and also Namkhen Yingbo to India to study from Guru Rinpoche's own gurus, the Ati Yoga and the Dzogchen teachings. And so they brought it back to Tibet as well. Following that, King Chisong Detsen requested Guru Rinpoche to bestow empowerments of the Vajrayana upon the king. So Guru Rinpoche took King Chisong Detsen to Chimbu, which is a hermitage located above Samye Monastery. And Guru Rinpoche opened the mandala of Gagye, which you mentioned earlier, and introduced them into the mandala and bestowed empowerments upon the king and many other disciples. And in that way, the king and many attained enlightenment due to that. And meanwhile, Guru Rinpoche also visited many other places, such as Lota Kachu and the like. And it is known, it should be understood that Guru Rinpoche lived in Tibet for a total of 55 years and 6 months, according to Jamga Gongchu. So Guru Rinpoche first arrived in Tibet when King Chisong Deltsen was just 21 years old. So Guru Rinpoche arrived in Tibet when the king was 21. And Guru Rinpoche was there at the time when King Chisong Deltsen passed away. King Chisong Deltsen passed away at the age of 69. Guru Rinpoche was present at that time as well. And even after the king's passing, Guru Rinpoche continued to reside in Tibet to guide disciples and also to guide the descendants of the king, the princes, and was present during the enthronement ceremony of King Chisong Deltsen's successor as well. And it should be understood that also that when King Chisong Deltsen, we say that he lived for 69 years, but he had many obstacles to his life. He wasn't supposed to live to that long. He was supposed to live to something like 40, but then Guru Rinpoche bestowed long life empowerments upon him and extended the king's lifespan. And then up to some maybe another 20 years or so, or 10 years. And then Guru Rinpoche continued to extend Chisong Deltsen's lifespan. And Chisong Deltsen could have lived longer than 69, but each time Guru Rinpoche bestowed the empowerment upon the long life empowerments upon King Chisong Deltsen, the ministers, there were many evil ministers that the king had, many ministers that were followers of the Pen tradition and who especially had a dislike towards Buddha Dharma, and who wanted to send Guru Rinpoche back to India, just basically get him out of Tibet, because they feared that Guru Rinpoche would be successful in completely spreading the Buddha Dharma in Tibet. So each time Guru Rinpoche bestowed empowerment, they created obstacles. So anyways, Guru Rinpoche was at least able to extend the king's life up till the age of 69. And after that, the king passed away. And so Guru Rinpoche continued to stay in Tibet, as I mentioned earlier, even after the king passed away. It should be understood, because he stayed in Tibet for 55 years and 6 months, that's a total of, he lived in Tibet for 48 years while the king was alive, and 7 years and 6 months after the king passed away. So even after the king passed away, he continued to live in Tibet for another 7 years. And during that time, he accomplished a great deal of benefit to sentient beings. And such as bestowing empowerments and concealing treasures, especially. Guru Rinpoche concealed many representations of himself. We call it gutsap, which are statues of himself. And he left those hidden. He created those in many ways. Some were created by his own hand. Some were created miraculously through his power. And these gutsaps were left behind for the sake of future disciples, because he understood that he needed to leave Tibet and leave this earth for a different continent, which many of you might have listened to the Mandala teachings, you will know it by the name of Chamara. So that land is in the southwestern direction. It's in the southwestern direction. It's known as Chamara. So he needed to go there because there were many rakshas, many wrathful beings there, and they sort of posed a threat to the humans living in Earth, because the rakshas were so much there that if they overflowed from their continent, they would come to Earth and completely conquer Earth and make it uninhabitable for humans to continue to live on Earth. So Guru Rinpoche, seeing the need to tame them and keep them under control, had to leave for Chamara. So as I mentioned, after the king passed away, he lived for another 7 years. And during that time, he left the representations hidden. And in these representations, sometimes there's the hair of Guru Rinpoche, sometimes it will contain the blood of Guru Rinpoche, or the nails, his nails, and so on. And if the future disciples that were born in the following centuries, such as ourselves, even if we do not have the great merit to directly behold the face of Guru Rinpoche, if we behold any of the representations or gutsaps which he left behind, Guru Rinpoche said that it is the same as directly meeting him in person. So therefore his kindness is great in that. He also concealed many treasures, dharmas, such as textbooks written in the Dakini script. He concealed them some in hills, some in the sky, some in rivers, some in oceans or lakes, some in rocks, some in trees, everywhere. And he made many great prophecies that in the future there will be many tartans or treasure bearers who were emanations of himself, and that they would reveal them at the right time, and sentient beings can benefit from that. He also made prophecies about a future king that would appear in Tibet, a descendant of King Chuson Delten, who would come to be known as King Langdharma. And King Langdharma was to become the prosecutor of Buddhism in Tibet. He was an enemy. He had earlier King Langdharma had made an evil aspiration in his own previous lifetime when he shared a life with one of Guru Rinpoche's own previous lifetimes as well. King Langdharma had made an evil aspiration in front of the Choden Charun Kashur, which is the great stupa, which we now see in Bodhanath in Kathmandu, Nepal. That stupa actually is connected to Guru Rinpoche, but connected to the previous life of Guru Rinpoche. It is also connected with the previous lives of King Chisong Deotzen, Kimbo Bodhisattva, and the translators, and also the evil King Langdao. So there's a story for that, but there's not enough time to speak of that story today. So I'll not mention that, but you can find it if you search the web. But anyways, Guru Rinpoche prophesied that there would be such a king, and he basically prophesied many future events that would occur in Tibet. And also he prophesied of how Tibet would be taken over by invading armies and the like, and also of how the Buddha Dharma will spread to other countries, and so on and so forth. And there were also many prophecies that he left behind regarding the Sakya tradition as well. As I mentioned earlier, he visited Sakya, which was empty land at that time, but he also made prophecies about some Khön members, Khön family members, such as there's the famous master from the Khön family known as Sakya Pendita Ngwa Gyaltsen, who was the 6th Sakya teacher. And Guru Rinpoche prophesied about him. Guru Rinpoche also prophesied Sakya Pendita's nephew, the 7th Sakya teacher, Drogön Shagya Papa, who would come to be, who would become the king of Tibet, and also the teacher of the Mongolian or Chinese Emperor Kublai Khan in the 13th century. And Guru Rinpoche prophesied both becoming Sakya Pendita and Drogön Shagya Papa. And he especially said that Drogön Shagya Papa would be an emanation of himself. Guru Rinpoche also left prophecies of other Khön family members, such as the 31st Sakya Chichen, Sachen Kunga Lodru, and the like. Not just that, but Guru Rinpoche also emanated over the centuries. He emanated into the Khön family, took rebirth in the Khön family. There are some emanations of Guru Rinpoche, such as the 24th Sakya Chichen, Jansona Wangbo, and also the 32nd Sakya Chichen, Drogön Wangding Yingbo. These were Khön family members who were emanations of Guru Rinpoche. So in this way, Guru Rinpoche has a very important connection with the Khön family. The Khön family is the family which I myself am born into. It is the family which was responsible for the founding of the Sakya tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, which is one of the 4 major Tibetan Buddhist traditions, and also came to be the rulers of Tibet during the 13th century. So there's a connection. Also, there were Khön family members during the time of Guru Rinpoche himself in the 8th century. There was especially two Khön family members. There were 2 brothers. The elder was known as Khön Nagendra Lakshita. In Tibetan, his name is Khön Lui Wangpo Sungma. The younger brother is known as Khön Dorje Rinchen. So these 2 were disciples of Guru Rinpoche. Were there when Guru Rinpoche and King Chisong Deotzen were all present in Tibet. And both these 2 Khön members received the complete Vajra Kilaya empowerment, as well as the empowerments on Karmo and Dugyal, which are the 2 protective deities of the Vajra Kilaya, Guru Padmasambhava himself. So Guru Rinpoche entrusted the Vajra Kilaya teachings to the Khön members as well. And due to that, up until now, since the 8th century, since the time of the 2 brothers, up until now, my own Guru, His Holiness the 41st Sakya Chichen, 42nd Sakya Chichen, and also His Holiness the late Sakya Pachen Rinpoche, and all of the Khön members. The Vajra Kilaya teachings have been successfully and transmitted from one master to another in an unbroken lineage to the centuries, since the 8th century up to the 21st. And so in that way, Guru Rinpoche's own disciples, direct disciples, were members of the Khön family. I also believe that although there does exist many Vajrakilaya styles or practice manuals, different lineages, the Khön Vajrakilaya lineage is the only existing Vajrakilaya lineage which was directly passed down from Guru Padmasambhava up until the present time in an unbroken lineage from one master to another. Because many of the Vajrakilaya lineages practice manuals were, as I mentioned earlier, concealed as dharma or treasures, and were only to be revealed several centuries after Guru Rinpoche left Tibet. So there's like a gap. It wasn't directly transmitted from one master to another over the centuries, but rather through pure vision and so on. But that is not the case in the Khön tradition, in the Khön Vajrakilaya tradition. It was passed successfully from one ear to another, from the mouth to ear, in succession, in unbroken lineage. And so I like to mention that. That is the connection that we have with Guru Padmasambhava. And as I mentioned earlier, he eventually had to leave Tibet. Before he left Tibet, he left many testimonies, you could say, or many instructions for each of the different Tibetans. He left instructions for the kings, the queens, the children, the princes and princesses, instructions for the ministers, for the householders, the monks and nuns, and the Ngakpas, which are the lay tantric practitioners, also for the general public and so on. Also, one thing that I forgot to mention earlier regarding the connection with the Khön family and Guru Rinpoche is that among those two brothers, the elder Khön Nagindra Rakshita, not only was he a disciple of Guru Padmasambhava, but he was also a disciple of Kimpa Bodhisattva, Shanta Rakshita. And as I mentioned earlier, before Guru Rinpoche arrived in Tibet, Buddha Dharma wasn't really around in Tibet. There were no monks at all. There was not a single Tibetan that had received the Buddhist ordination, the monks or nuns ordination according to the Vinaya tradition. So the king wanted to introduce the ordination system in Tibet. And in order to do that, they first needed to test the Tibetans to see if the Tibetans were capable to keep and guard the ordination vows just as the Indian monks and nuns were able to. And so in order to do that, Kimpa Bodhisattva, who was, as I mentioned earlier, the Indian abbot who had visited Tibet, he chose what we call semi-din, 7 men. 7 Tibetan laymen were chosen. And he gave, this Kimpa Bodhisattva bestowed the monks' ordination vows upon the 7 men. And among the 7 men, one was Khön Nagindra Rakshita from the Khön family. So therefore, the first Tibetan monk, you could say, was also a member, one of the first Tibetan monk. The group of the first Tibetans to receive ordination was from the Khön family. And these 7 men were so successful in guarding their ordination vows that it sort of opened the door for future generations of Tibetans to receive the ordination vows. And so therefore, right now we have so many, over the centuries, there have been so many Buddhist monks and nuns. This was the starting point with the 7 laymen. And Khön Nagindra Rakshita was one of those. So in this way, the Khön family made great contributions to Tibetan Buddhism in that way. And is also related to, has connections with Guru Rinpoche and Kimbu Bodhisattva, Kimbu Tenzin. And so anyways, after the 7 years, Guru Rinpoche, after having left the instructions for the Tibetans, left for Chamara. And there he subdued all of the Raksha spirits. And he then went up to the top of Chamara and remained there, made it his home or his residence. And then that place of Chamara came to be known as Sandopalji, the pure land. He blessed it to become his pure land, his paradise or his home. So therefore, anyone who is devoted to Guru Rinpoche, who wishes to see him in our future lives, if we pray to him in this life, through such prayers such as the 7-line prayer, by reciting his mantra, by reciting the prayer which pacifies all obscurations or obstacles, by praying, by reciting the prayer which fulfills all wishes in the life. There are many choices of prayers when it comes to praying to Guru Rinpoche. But anyways, if we recite such prayers with great devotion to him, it is certain that he will pick us up at the moment of death and deliver us or take us with him to his pure land. And if that happens, then we will be able to receive teachings from him and have the great fortune to be directly guided by him under his care. So this is sort of like the brief biography of Guru Rinpoche. As I mentioned earlier, there's a great number of biographies regarding Guru Rinpoche's life. There's about 10,900 biographies, even more possibly. But the one I based my talk today is the one written by Jamgyal Kongtrul Lodo Thai, who was a Karma Kagyu master and also a non-sectarian master who worked closely with the non-sectarian master Jan Kinze Wangpo. There are also other biographies which the listeners, if you are interested, you can read, such as 3 Reasons for Confidence. It is written by the Sakya Jonang master Taranatha. That biography is a little bit longer than the one written by Jamgyal Kongtrul. But anyways, the one known as 3 Reasons for Confidence, and also the one written by Jamgyal Kongtrul, which I spoke of today. You can find that if you go to the Lodzawa House translation website, and you can find it there. And it is available for easily reading. And there's also a book known as the Lotus-born. It is the biography of Guru Rinpoche, which was originally a treasure, which he concealed and later revealed by the Delta known as Nyangral Nimawesel. And in Tibetan, that is known as the Katham Samningma. And so that is sort of like a middle-length version of his biography. He also has a very, very long biography in the verse of poems, in the form of verses, and also one in the form of prose. They were written by Ugyen Lingpa and Sangye Lingpa, I believe. They are known as Dhammakatha. But I don't know if those are available in English. But whichever biographies there are that are available in English regarding the Guru's life, we should try to search for them and read them. Because the more you read, the more devotion you will feel. And the more devotion you feel towards the Guru's life, his activities, the more blessings you will be able to receive from him. Because the devotion, it opens the door to receive blessings. So therefore, we need to develop devotion towards him. But devotion without reasoning or without understanding is not very stable. Of course, it is good, but it cannot really get you very far. So we need the devotion that comes from understanding Guru Rinpoche, who he was, what did he do to benefit sentient beings. When we read, we understand who he was, what he did for us. And with that, we will be able to generate a very stable devotion, which is the devotion which arises from understanding. And in order to do that, for that to arise, the best way is to read his biography. So I would like to request you all to please read his biography after the talk, whenever you have time. And so this is the short biography. Now to get back to Tsok, we have two words, Tsok and Kor. If we break them up, it's Tsok and Kor. And we should first understand what Tsok means. Tsok means accumulations. And if one might wonder what are the accumulations are the 6 perfections, which are the perfection of generosity, the perfection of moral conduct, the perfection of patience, the perfection of diligence, and the perfection of meditative concentration, and the perfection of wisdom. These are the 6 perfections. And so these together are known as like the accumulations. They are of the nature of accumulations, which is basically something good. And these 6 perfections can be included into 2 categories of the accumulations. There are 2 types of accumulations: the accumulation of merit and the accumulation of wisdom. So among these 2, the perfection of generosity and moral conduct, patience, and diligence belong to the accumulation of merit. And the perfection of meditative concentration and the perfection of wisdom, which are the last 2 remaining perfections, are included, or you could say, of the nature of the accumulation of wisdom. So when we perfect these 2 accumulations, both the accumulations of merit and wisdom, then we attain enlightenment. So therefore, we need to practice these 6 perfections. And when we practice Tsok, all of these 6 perfections are included in there. We are making the offering, which is the generosity. We sit still and sit nicely, which is the moral conduct. We practice patience at the same time, because when we practice, sometimes we may feel discomfort and the like. And at that time, we practice patience. So the perfection of patience is also included while we practice Tsok. We also practice make the Tsok offering with great diligence or great joy. Diligence, when we speak of perfection of diligence, it basically means great joy in accumulating good deeds. So if we're really happy to accumulate, offer the Tsok or perform the Tsok practice, it shows that we have the perfection of diligence there. And we also have, when we practice Tsok, we do not, let our mind wander, but we concentrate on the Guru Rinpoche, the objects of offering, the offerings that we are going to offer, and so on in the practice. So in that way, our mind is stable. It is not wandering elsewhere, but is concentrated. And we also practice Tsok by understanding that oneself, who is the practitioner, the objects or recipients of offering, which is the Guru Rinpoche and the Yidam and the Dharma protectors, basically the refuge tree, and also the offerings, which is the Tsok Cha, the Tsokchan, basically the meat and the wine and any other fruits and edibles that one is offering. We understand them to all be devoid of true existence. In other words, the nature of emptiness. In this way, while practicing Tsok, we have the perfection of wisdom there. So in this way, all 6 perfections they are included in the Tsok if we practice it correctly. And because of that, it shows that because the 6 perfections are included in Tsok, the true accumulations are there included in Tsok as well. And because, when we practice the Tsok, and we successfully practice it, we also successfully accumulate or perfect the true accumulations. And when you successfully perfect the true accumulations, then the result of all of the 6 perfections are the true accumulations, which is fully enlightenment, can be attained. So therefore, it's very important. Tsok, this practice is like, you could say, the very cause for enlightenment. It leads you directly to enlightenment. And especially because it is a Vajrayana practice, it can swiftly lead you to enlightenment in a single lifetime if you practice diligently. And even if you're not able to practice that diligently, you can attain enlightenment at the moment of death when you enter the Pardo stage or the intermediate stage. Or even if you haven't practiced diligently enough to attain enlightenment in the Pardo stage, you will at least attain enlightenment in the time of 7 lifetimes. So in any way, it is very swift. It gives you swift results. So this is the meaning of Tsok, which is, it is like the accumulations, the 6 perfections. Now we must understand what Kor means. Kor, if we make the word longer, is Kollo. Kollo means wheel. And usually, to understand the Kollo, which is included in the word Tsok, we have to understand this wheel that exists in India, which is a weaponized wheel, a wheel used in wars or battles to kill enemies or conquer enemies. Wheels were used in ancient times, the weaponized wheels. So just like the weaponized wheel can destroy other objects and make sure that there's no continuation of the other objects or enemies or the like. Likewise, the wheel of the Tsok, the wheel of the Gana, which is the Tsok, the wheel of Tsok, what this does is similar to the weaponized wheel, because the wheel of Tsok, what it does is it cuts or destroys all of our broken pledges, our broken samayas, and purifies all of our misdeeds, and also helps us to accumulate, just like the weaponized wheel helps us to conquer our enemies. The wheel of Tsok also helps us to perfect the true accumulations. So in this way, it is similar to the weaponized wheel. So that is how we should understand the core law, or the wheel of Tsok. Just to mention again, if you did not get that, the kolo, the wheel of Tsok, cuts all conceptions of the mind. It cuts all conceptions of the mind. It also cuts all the, or destroys, or purifies all of the broken samayas, the pledges, the vows that we failed to keep, and also all of the misdeeds that we have accumulated. We should also take note that the purpose of kolo, what it does in this case, is also to cut the conceptions in our minds. In our day-to-day life, we have many conceptions in our minds, mostly influenced by the 3 poisons such as ignorance, attachment, and anger. And we have so much conceptions, mostly bad. The Tsokor, the wheel of Tsok, cuts all of these conceptions and can help us to come in direct face to our true nature, the naked mind. So that is the purpose of what Tsokor means. And of course, I mentioned earlier, in this case, the objects or the recipient who we are offering, making the offering, is a great beings such as Guru Padmasambhava, enlightened being. So the recipient is most excellent, and the practice we are practicing is most excellent as well. But when we practice this, since this is a Mahayana practice, especially Vajrayana, it's important to make sure not to forget the loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. You're not making all of these offerings for the benefit of yourself, but rather for the benefit of all sentient beings, having understood that all sentient beings have been one's mother in one's previous lifetime. And in order to repay their kindness, one proceeds to practice this Tsok in order to attain enlightenment. So that is the whole purpose. Otherwise, if you do it for yourself, then it can fall into being a Hinayana practice, which will not lead to enlightenment. So therefore, one needs to have both the wings of method or skillful methods, which is loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and also the wing of wisdom, understanding the lack of nature of oneself, the practitioner, Guru Rinpoche, the person who one is offering, and the objects which one is offering, which is the Tsok. So with these two, the wings of wisdom and skillful methods, then this Tsok can successfully, certainly become a cause for attaining enlightenment. So this is what one should keep in mind. Also, one should make sure to dedicate, it will be the prayers of dedications are always included in any of the Vajrayana practices, but not just praying verbally, but one should also feel that whatever merit I've accumulated from the Tsok practice, I dedicate for the sake of all sentient beings, so that they may quickly attain enlightenment. So with this kind of mindset, one must practice the Tsok. So with that, I have completed my talk. I'd like to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity for speaking on this. And also I pray that all of you are in good health and continue to take precautions as the virus is still around. Thank you.
Kadinche, Sangurumshe. Thank you.
So Naman Diye Tanje Seba Yen Tone Nyebe Dana Tanje Ge Na Che Balon Chuba Ye Sebe Tsore Jowa Shu Changde Bawe Chedai Yema Ai Gundu Sambu Keyan Te Shinde Te Dai Gunge Jesu La Jenge Wai Na Tam Je Rabu Tu son shebe gyawai tamche ge wai kangai chodo nga bade da ge re zawai de ge kyan sambo che che rabdo ngo warai ge Choi Gyongwe Gyobai Choi Bai Kenjoi Yatsu Yosu Kangwe Kare Chunde Tenpa Satze Asanga Baye Tenpa Ge Jin Chen Pege Devara Doje Den Ba Den
ge che se bara gyo jin chu be dong ge yin che me ai ge jan je le nam ka nyam ba shu she ja tam che se be che ya zhou gen ye de zhu be tu jie chen sam ye qin ze be do ma wa zhang ge la me sha la ge cha cao